Yes, inshallah.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Right now or at the end? صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة and سورة الإخلاص قل هو الله أحد for the following مرحومين Sayyid Abu Hassan Naqvi bin Mir Asadullah Khan Naqvi, Mir Zaya Hassan Naqvi and Razia Askar Ali bin Taqi Hussein Radhawi Mir Askar Ali Radhawi bin Mir Hassan Ali Radhawi. Rahimallah min qara'a Surah Al-Fatiha and Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad 3 times. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد. بسم الله الرحمن. Thank you. شكرا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بسيدنا ومولانا الإمام الحسن عليه السلام، وجعلنا الله وإياكم من الطالبين بثأره بين يدي الإمام المنصور المؤيد المهدي من آل محمد صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى ابن عمك أمير المؤمنين صلى الله عليك يا أبا محمد أيها الحسن الزكي الناصح الأمين، وعلى أخيك أبي عبد الله ما خاب من تمسك بكم وأمنا من لجأ إليكم. يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، يقول الله في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وأوفوا بالعهد إن العهد كان مسؤولا. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. A second salawat in honor of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. A third with your full love in honor of the Imam of our time, Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, with your loudest of voices. Respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Imam al-Mujtaba alayhi salam is arguably one of the biggest victims of character assassination within the history of the entire religion of Islam. And being such a pivotal, critical, significant figure within the timeline of Islamic historicity, within the timeline of Islamic historiography, we notice very much has been done to belittle the great name of Al-Mujtaba min al-Muhammad. Unfortunately, very little has been done in an academic world to begin with. In fact, the academic efforts are a net negative with respect to Imam al-Mujtaba. We understand that there are many Orientalists that decide to write a book, for example, written in the mid-20th century by Dwight Donaldson, who is an Orientalist scholar from the UK. He went and he studied in the Middle Eastern world about the various point of views and perspectives within the Islamic ideologies. Dwight Donaldson, look him up, his book is online as well, The Shia Religion. Now he came to this conclusion because he discerned that the Shia way of life is really pretty much its own religion. And in his material he put forth that Hassan ibn Ali is indeed a misunderstood individual. Now this is a non-Muslim academic concurring the following. He's a misunderstood individual, but from what I have understood, Hassan ibn Ali was despised by the majority of society, and primarily, in addition, and this might come across as thought-provoking, despised by his own family. And he concluded that he had a very sour relationship, Imam al-Hassan, a sour relationship with his father, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. They didn't have the best of relationships. Why would he conclude this? You look at the citations that he mentions, they are material that are apolitical, a-sectarian, be them Sunni, non-Sunni, Shi'i, non-Shi'i. And he concluded the following: this is a glimpse of the testament of the reality that very little, sadly, has been done in bringing to light the epic, fiery, legendary legacy of Kareem Ahl al-Bayt. That is why tonight, inshallah ta'ala, as in one opinion, the martyrdom of Imam al-Mujtaba, or widely accepted in the 7th of Safar, whatever we can and whenever we could, remembering this Imam that is madloom and masmoom, let us bring some light to a very darkened and understudied area, inshallah ta'ala. Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam, we notice one of the greatest misconceptions leveled against him was that he relinquished khilafah. This is not true, and this couldn't be further from the truth. Relinquishing your God-given right is not within your own paradigm or within your own prerogative to do. Khilafah is his right. Rather, he relinquished political leadership. It's as simple as that. And by relinquishing political leadership, he postponed when he is able himself to execute and act upon political leadership. If we actually study what is known to be the sulh, the reconciliation of Imam al-Mujtaba with Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, we'll see that the reality is much more different than the likes of Dwight Donaldson, than the likes of Ibn Taymiyyah, than the likes of others, even from the likes of scholastic material from the Shia world that come to purport Hassan ibn Ali gave up authority. La, it couldn't be further from the truth. Just by examining the elementary, you don't have to look far. You don't need to be a scholar of the highest degree. Just examine. Have I even considered to look at the sulh of Imam al-Hasan? Let me see the terms. Having graduated in political science, they always would tell us constantly, in my undergrad, that the best political acumen is the one who writes the terms, makes the terms on their own deal. They make the decisions on their own terms. We found a very interesting geopolitical circumstance. And this is for those who are history buffs, by the way. So if you're into history, tonight's your night. If not, give us patience, inshallah ta'ala. We find that Imam al-Mujtaba, the moment Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen was martyred and returned back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the 40th year after Hijrah, Imam al-Hasan stood, before Imam Ali was buried, stood over the body of Asadullah al-Ghalib and began to give, I would argue, one of the most super amazing, without exaggerating, sermons you will ever see within the religion of Islam. This khutbah of Imam al-Hasan addressing and mourning Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib should be very much studied. He begins in the following: Ya ayyuhan nas, al-Hasan ibn Ali is talking. Today we have lost a man. Mikael the angel would fight to his left. Jibreel would fight to his right. He would always safeguard the message of Allah. Now if you want the dunya, don't join my way. I am your next imam. But if you want the akhirah, let us continue what my father died trying. Pursue straight towards the man sitting in his lofty throne in Sham. Let us overthrow him. Continue what my father died doing. Now Imam al-Hasan, when he says this, he's referencing multiple geopolitical issues. Honestly, History is his story. It's written by the victors. And when you see the Ahlul Bayt being persecuted by establishments, Bani Umayyah owning the world, Bani al-Abbas owning the second part of the world, you don't really see a moment where you get the Shia breathing comfortably so that they could write. I remember one of the ulama, Shaheed Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, lived under a tumultuous government. We all understand Ba'athist, that regime, how horrible it was, how restricting to the ulama it was. You know, Arba'in Mashaya, we walked to Abu Abdullah, that was banned from the 1970s to 2003. You couldn't walk. Many have the impression that this was this long tradition for centuries. La, we got the ability to do this after the fall of that tyrant Fir'aun of our time, who killed the scholars and blew up the shrines of Ahlul Bayt. When this person was removed, then the Shia could finally breathe. You know, most of their scholarly work, Shaheed Muhammad Baqir Sadr, he wrote it by pen because he couldn't publish it, he would be persecuted. And when he also wrote it, he had to write it just in case it becomes public information with the terms of what the establishment agrees upon. You can't say La'natullah, for example, on a certain figure we respect. So that's why you might see traditions from the Shia narrative under these tyrannical establishments, Bani al-Abbas, Bani Umayyah, where they're trying their hardest to guide you in the 21st century today, but trying to save face so they don't get restricted or locked up or jailed. One Imam, how many years was he jailed? Al-Kadhim, salamullah alayhi, 15 years according to some traditions, at the very least 7 years. Why? Over speculation. Let alone, and this is for those who ask, why aren't there works from the Shia primary sources? Where are they? Like I look at, for example, the Seerah works from the non-Shia, bin Ishaq, bin Hisham, primary sources, Tabari, for example. And I don't say I will never take. No, I'll take. But when you're writing a material under the eyes of a government that has venom and vitriol against the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt, let alone the Ahlul Bayt, you're not going to find much fara'il about the Ahlul Bayt. And I'll give you an example. How many of you know about the Imam, not to get too political, but the polemical, the Imam of the Maliki school of that, Malik ibn Anas, a scholar? He admired the Ahlul Bayt, a student of the 6th Imam of Ahlul Bayt. What's his canonized text called? The Muwatta. The Muwatta of Malik ibn Anas. I believe we should all be well informed of the various worldviews that are out there. Before you move on to the worldviews, you should learn about your own worldview, then expand. The worst thing a Muslim can be is ignorant. Let me learn. What are other Muslims learning about? What are their sources? Okay. The Muwatta of Malik, how did it come about? Abu Ja'far al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi, the Khalifa, we believe, is primarily responsible for poisoning Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur saw that, listen, before him was the Khalifa al-Safah. Before them, Banu Umayyah. So they were like, we don't want to make the same mistake Banu Umayyah did. So our policy will not be direct killing of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, as Yazid perhaps did, as Muawiyah fought Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. So our policy will be what? Political. Siyasa. Politics. Oh man, politics is dirty. It can make Iblis look like the biggest beautiful angel. And they make an angel look like the worst devil. That's politics. You word words in a way. Of course, there's healthy politics, of course. You can't be void from that. But when people decide to use the tools given to them by society, they can change narratives. Till today, how many people believe, for example, the Prophet frowned at a blind man in Surah Abasa? The Prophet rebuked and ridiculed poor, mistreated individual. Why? It's in a certain narration, under a certain book, under the guise of a certain establishment. Abu Ja'far al-Mansur went to Malik ibn Anas and he said to him, Ya Malik. He was a judge under him. He was a scholar with all his credit. He says, we need a constitution. We don't want to make the same mistake Banu Umayyah did. Banu Umayyah just had fallen. Abbasid government is now around. Not the same mistake. What should we do? We need to make a constitution, an Islamic constitution, a Dastur Islami, he said. Ya Malik, make it in a way where it's easy to understand. And what did he use the term? وَوَطِّئْهُ لِلنَّاسِ, meaning easy. Hence he called it the Muwatta of Malik. But I have two conditions. Stay away from the very strong ahadith of Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas is a companion of the Prophet. He's his cousin, well-known man. And we report from him as well from our narrative. He has ahadith that are very shadeed sometimes. So ahkam for fiqh and jurisprudence, he makes life a little bit complicated according to some scholars. So Abu Ja'far al-Diwaniqi says, stay away from the ahadith that are shadid of Ibn Abbas and stay away from the ahadith of Ali ibn Abi Talib. That's why you read the Muwatta of Malik today, one of the books for a majority of the non-Muslim school out there, not a single hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen, not one. Thousands of hadiths from others, not one from Ali ibn Abi Talib. That's the result of a government that hates Ahlul Bayt and says, pump some books out. Of course you're not going to have a lot of Ahlul Bayt. Or some of the material from Sahah editions, canonized texts. Give me narrations from Ahlul Bayt, about 17 from Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. I don't even need to mention which Sahah, you guys all know very much well. Or give me a book that says Quran and Ahlul Bayt, rather they'll give you Quran and the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet. Is there a chain? No, there's not. I heard from someone, the Muwatta also mentions this. This is the problem when a political establishment says, we want you to write a hadith book. And what about the ahadith of Rasulullah from previous times, the first 100 years? Burn them. حتى لا تختلط الأحاديث مع القرآن الكريم, so that the ahadith cannot be confused with the Quran. As if anyone will confuse ahadith from the Quran al-Kareem. We all know the Quran is a book that is profound. You can't mistake in it. You can't make mistakes about it. It's a book that when you hear it, that's the Holy Quran. Something off, someone will tell you. It's an oral tradition, preserved by memory. And the Quran testifies, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِّرٍ. And we have made the Quran easy to remember. Is there anyone who will now remember and imply it? Now you're telling me we need to burn ahadith so that people won't mistake them for the Quran. The Quran, you can never mistake it. That's the result of establishments. Now, you found a situation where Imam al-Mujtaba is going after the biggest establishment in his time. He says, I don't care what it is. Let me continue what my father died trying. What was his father trying to do? He was trying to finish the world from the Pharaoh sitting in Sham, from that king sitting in Sham. So what was he doing? Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen was martyred on the 21st of Ramadan. He had dispatched a letter to one of his friends and representatives by the name of Qais ibn Sa'ad ibn Abi Ibadah. Now, going back very briefly, I again want to reiterate as a disclaimer, this is a rather comprehensive historical discussion. So for those who are again geeky in their areas of interest with respect to history, this is your day. So please, inshallah, tolerate this. Imam Ali sends a letter to his wali in a country we all know called Azerbaijan, north of modern day Iran. He represents Imam Ali there. He says, Ya Qais ibn Sa'ad ibn Abi Ibadah. Qais is the son of Sa'ad. We all know him to be one of the biggest tribal leaders in Medina. Sa'ad ibn Abi Ibadah was the leader of the clan known as Al-Khazraj. And Sa'ad ibn Abi Ibadah was a lover of the Ahlul Bayt. He indeed loved Ahlul Bayt. His son also loved Ahlul Bayt. That's why Imam Ali made him his representative in Azerbaijan. He's like, Ya Qais, I have 60,000 soldiers. You have around 85,000 soldiers. My soldiers are fed up. They're fatigued. We had just fought Siffin. Before that, we fought in Jamal. Then we finished Nahrawan. I'm telling them, let's go and finish him off, the man in Sham, and then we'll finish this issue. They said, we're tired, Ya Ali. In fact, some of the complaints they leveled against Imam Ali, our swords are bent. We can't, we're too tired, Ya Ali. They begin to bring excuses. Imam Ali says, if you're not going to go, I'll go myself. Sometimes they would have to hold back Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen from the member of Kufa. That's how much he was fed up from these people. And you know how much Imam Ali was fed up? He would say, Subhanallah, Muawiyah's men, he orders them to fight the Imam of their time. Without hesitation they do it. I am the Imam for all of these men over them, and I tell them do something, they don't want to listen. How I wish I can trade one of my guys for 4 of Muawiyah's men. The words of Imam Ali, give me 4 of his men. They're so loyal to Muawiyah. When they are told fight Ali ibn Abi Talib, they'll fight without even questioning. But my guys, it's too hot, the swords are bent, we just finished 3 wars, we're too tired. He's like, the loyalty, the discrepancy is mind-boggling. Wallah, I would trade 1 for 4 of them. So Imam says, look, you're not going to continue? It's Ramadan. Imam Ali, the war's all concluded in Ramadan. I want to finish him. Okay, these guys are too tired. Qais, send me your 80,000, let's go finish it. Now if you read Tarikh Dimashq, which is a book on the history with regards to the greater Levant region, and you read the material of Suhail Zakar, a non-Shi'i scholar and historian, they all say that when Imam Ali sent this letter to Qais ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Ibadah, Muawiyah in Sham was literally shivering. He was afraid, like now I'm done, that's it. When Ali goes, he goes. He doesn't stop. There's a reason why they say you are not a coward if you run away from a battle where Dhul Fiqar is found. You can't run away from any battle, you're a coward. But if there's Dhul Fiqar in that battle, you gotta go, it's fine. We will not blame you. Ali now is gonna get armed with 80,000 plus his 60,000. It's over, what do? They concocted the plan, let's just get rid of him. Assassination attempt. Now here's a brief observation. If you read the material of Sheikh Hassan bin Farhan al-Maliki, Saudi Arabian scholar, non-Shi'i, but one of the most profound modern Islamic historians, really objective academic work, and we mentioned earlier Suhail Zakar, you will find a common denominator very much understudied about the geopolitical circumstances with Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib and Imam al-Hassan. Notice, if you examine in all of Islamic history from the year 37 after Hijrah until the year 40 after Hijrah, every single one of Imam Ali's wars, not just the major battles, Jamal, Siffin, Nahrawan, sometimes there are skirmishes, sometimes there are little battles. Think of the battles of Rasulullah, you can think of Badr, Uhud, Khandaq, Hunayn. Rasulullah, according to Ahadith, had in total about 73 battles. Some of them are small skirmishes basically, some of them are big wars. All of the battles of Imam Ali from year 37 to year 40 after Hijrah were all from where? The west of his empire. The west. So from Kufa, west. Sham, Jordan, Syria, these are all modern day nations we're talking about, but in that direction. Not a single battle from the east, Khurasan and the modern Punjab region. Why is that? If you read, again, the material of Hassan bin Farhan al-Maliki and Suhail Zakar, they mention Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib made a peace treaty with what they describe as, and these are the exact words, Muluk as-Sind, the kings of Sind, yani the royal individuals who are sovereign powers in what is now, I believe, the modern Punjab region of Sind, towards the east. He made an agreement with them, look, we will not fight. And I say this, subhanAllah, give Imam Ali to anyone, they'll make him number one. Give him to self-proclaimed Muslims, they'll leave him as number four. They understood him, they never fought with Imam Ali. That's why no war came from the east of his empire, only from the west. From who? Self-proclaimed Muslims as well. That is why, subhanAllah, when they say Holako Khan came and destroyed Iraq basically years later during the time of Sheikh At-Tusi and Sheikh Al-Mufid, and you all know Sheikh At-Tusi's library in Baghdad was burnt. What happened with this situation? They said, destroy anyone and kill anyone in your way except the line of Ali ibn Abi Talib. We made an agreement with him. Because this man also charged from the east of that world of Asia at that time, and he had heard that Ali ibn Abi Talib had an outstanding agreement that we have to still be bound by. Kill everyone except the Hashimi from Ali's line. And in this situation, we found that the fruits of peace emerged. But alas, the Muslim wants to fight Amir al-Mu'mineen, or at least the self-proclaimed Muslim. Imam Ali waits. 80,000 come from Azerbaijan by Qais ibn Sa'd. On their way, what does Muawiyah feel? It's over. I'm done. That's it. What do? Muawiyah's confidants all gathered. Marwan ibn al-Hakam, Amr ibn al-As, and of course the shaitan Abdul Rahman bin Muljam will just kill him in his salah. They went and they killed Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen in his mihrab. Qais ibn Sa'd was still on his way, he didn't make it. Then Imam al-Hassan stands up, he says what? The sermon we said earlier, let's continue. Fight, finish what my father died trying. They say to him, Ya Hassan, you are absolutely outnumbered. He says, why? He says, perhaps the soldiers of Qais are not going to continue. Why? Because they came with the understanding that it was Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, and now that he has died, it's not easy. So Imam al-Hassan said, then it's fine. Let me take whoever I have. 12,000 soldiers were formed, just 12,000. How many did Muawiyah have? According to reports, the likes such as Tariq Damashq and among others, this is a bizarre number, 400,000 soldiers. For those who say Imam al-Hasan is a passive Imam, does not want to fight, come and tell me, have you seen proportions like this? 12,000 versus 400,000, and he says, let's do it. Allah's got our back. What bravery do you have? Ya Kareem Ahl al-Bayt. He pursues, he goes, he maintains, and still they say that Imam al-Hasan is continuing. And who is alongside Imam al-Mujtaba? Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. He's with him. Those who say that Hassan and Hussein are two different people, they're one. They're one. Imam Hassan would do exactly what Hussein did in Karbala, and Imam Hussein would do exactly what Imam Hassan did before Karbala. كلهم نور واحد. They are all one light source, but the circumstances are all different, brothers and sisters. Then you see him pursuing. Muawiyah sends a few letters to Imam Hassan's generals. Imam Hassan divided his army into 4 parts. There are 12,000, 3,000 ahead of him, 3,000 with him, 3,000 behind him, and 3,000 in Kufa to stay behind. So in this he divided it. The soldiers ahead of him, Muawiyah sends a letter, says to him, if you would like, leave Hassan, it's not worth it, and I will give you, wait for it, 1 million dinar. A dinar is gold coin. Dirham is silver. Dinar, dirham. The dirham is equivalent to 10 dinars. So that's 10,000 dirhams. 10 million dirhams, 1 million dinar. 10 million silver, 1 million gold. If you want, and his general was Ubaydullah ibn al-Abbas, Imam Hassan's cousin, his own cousin. It basically, imagine this, you want the lottery? Leave Hassan. The man's like, that's a big number. That's a big number. 10,000, sorry, I keep saying 10,000. 10, because it's a bizarre number. 10 million silver coins. You want that? Leave him. It's not bad. Not a bad decision. Just leave him? Not fight? No, I won't just leave him. He took his 3,000 and he joined Muawiyah. Betrayal. Then Imam Hassan is down to 9,000 men. What happened? Muawiyah sends another letter to the 3,000 behind Imam al-Hassan. What is that letter? He fabricated and forged a signature that I, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, and Hassan ibn Ali are brothers. إنما المؤمنون إخوة فأصلحوا بين أخويكم واتقوا الله لعلكم ترحمون واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا. Siyasa, politics, it's ridiculous. And Hassan ibn Ali and me, we decided not to pursue. Hassan gave me bay'ah. These people read this and they're like, that's preposterous. Hassan, you are a man that is no longer seen as a man in our eyes. They left him. 3,000 dissolved. How much does Imam Hassan have now? 6. The 3,000 that stay behind in Kufa and the 3,000 with him. Word spread that Hassan gave bay'ah to Muawiyah. You know what happened? 3,000 that are with Imam al-Hassan dissolved, just a handful stayed with him. The 3,000 in Kufa are there to guard the capital. Guess what Imam Hassan does? Still persists. I don't care. Let's go. Why? Because this reminds me of the day of Badr. Outnumbered 313 versus 900, and they still fought. Forget Badr, the battle of Hunayn, 4,000, Thaqif and Hawazin, and you had at the very end 8, one of them Amir al-Mu'mineen, and Allah dispatched angels, warriors. The Quran says, Lam taroha, you did not see them, but they fought with you. Imam Hassan says, Allah can do the same exact today. Let's continue with this handful until one day, as Imam al-Hassan is on his way with just the few left. Look at the betrayal. The Khawarij that were with Imam al-Hassan, one day Imam was leading Jama'ah, one of them ran with a knife and stabbed him at his back, salamullahi alayh. They had to remove him, an ambush happened, then the Imam was brought to safety. Betrayal. The Imam got on his horse, a man came and stabbed at the thigh of Imam al-Mujtaba, salamullahi alayh. At this point, Imam al-Hassan was severely wounded and injured. He was taken to a shelter. The two who were guarding him in this shelter was like a nearby cave actually, in the border of Syria, modern day, and Iraq. The person guarding was Mukhtar al-Thaqafi and Imam Abi Abdullah al-Hussein guarding his brother's life. Until a day later, a letter came to Imam al-Hassan from Muawiyah. Ya Hassan ibn Ali, don't be like your father Ali ibn Abi Talib and try fighting. It's not in your favor. How about I make you a deal? I will write to you a treaty. You can write the terms. Imam al-Hassan literally has no soldiers. Literally, he can't, he doesn't have anyone else. He is compelled to make this agreement. He has to. So he sends it back to Muawiyah and he writes the following terms. In the beginning, O Muawiyah, understand that this is due to compulsion. And Allah said, La ikraha fi din in the Quran. My terms are the following. You will rule by the sunnah of Rasulullah and the Quran and the leaders after Rasulullah, meaning the Ahlul Bayt. You will rule by that. Why did he make that the first condition? Because how many bid'ah were happening during that time period. Islam was confusing. Islam was gone. You know, the famous companion Abu Hurairah was alive at this time. And they asked him, Ya Aba Hurairah, how did Rasulullah pray? And these are Muslims that were asking. He said, why? You don't know how to pray? He says, we see people praying like this, like this, like this. They're praying in weird ways. Ways that make no sense. He says, if you want the prayer of Rasulullah, Salat al-Nabi ka Salat al-Hashimiyin. Like the Salah of Bani Hashim. Who was Bani Hashim around at that time? Imam Ali, Hassan and Hussein. They were the only ones still preserving the right way of Salah, for goodness sake. Islam was gone. Salat al-Jum'ah was done on a Thursday. Jum'ah on a Thursday? All because of the innovations that were happening from the man sitting in Sham. So Imam Hassan said, look, I will relinquish political power. You have to promise, live by the sunnah of Rasulullah, the Quran, and the Khulafa as-Salihin, the Ahlul Bayt afterwards. Number two, lift your sanctions on the Shia. You have made a condition. No one buys from the Shia. No one sells to the Shia. They are starving, they want to breathe. Lift those sanctions. Number three, if I am to die, then Hussein becomes Khalifa if you are still alive. But if I am alive and you die, Khilafah goes to me. Number four, you will stop the cursing and la'na of my father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, on your pulpits. And number five, fear Allah for what you do. Number six, you will see that there is a treasury in an area of Iran called Dar Yastajurd. It's a treasury that belonged to Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. It has a lot of money in there. That one is outside of your agreement. That one belongs to me. Give me the wealth of that. It's basically like an abandoned bank that has a lot of resources. Imam Hassan has foresight, you and I don't have. He says Muawiyah will become constricting even after the agreement. I need to have some sort of financial freedom to save the Shia at the same time. Give me that. He agrees to this, they send it. Muawiyah gets the letter from Imam al-Hassan and he looks at Marwan ibn al-Hakam and he says, this agreement is beneath my feet. But I will live by the terms until he dies and I will give the Khilafah to my son Yazid. But for now, I will live by his terms. Do you know the fruit and the product and the manifestation and the fruition of this agreement with Muawiyah, what it gave us? For 10 years. Because Imam Hassan died 10 years later, 50 after Hijrah. This was 40, he died 50 after Hijrah. For 10 years, not a single, no one records this sadly, not a single Shi'i died by direct assassination. If they died by natural causes. Look, Hijr bin Ali al-Kindi, who his grave was usurped today unfortunately when those self-proclaimed Muslims defiled the sanctity of his haram and he took out his body. Hijr bin Adi al-Kindi, he died in the year 51 after Hijrah by Muawiyah, not in the years before then. None of the Shia were killed. He saved the Shia presence at the time, and little did they know it, because some of the followers of Ahlul Bayt came to Imam al-Hassan and they said to him, "Oh, you who has humiliated the mu'mineen today, you make an agreement with him?" They would say, "Assalamu alayka ya mudhill al-mu'mineen wal-'iyadhu billah." You have humiliated, and these are some of the top companions. Qais ibn Sa'ad said something similar to him. How could you do that? You just gave up your right? Khilafah is not something Imam Hassan can give, because it's given by Allah. Allah chooses who He wants to represent Him. We don't choose who we want Allah to have as His representative. For goodness sake, even in the Western paradigm, you pick the president, but the president picks his vice president. I don't say, hey, I have to pick who represents you. No, I know who represents me best. You can pick me, fine. But I have to pick my representative. And that's been the sunnah of Allah since the dawn of time, literally. When there were no humans on earth, Allah still found it necessary to say, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ Khalifa. And your Lord has said to the angels, I will bring down on the earth a Khalifa. وَجَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ خَلِيفَةً. These are all the Quranic patterns on Khilafah. God picks. Khilafah doesn't come from down, up. It comes from up, down. Therefore Imam Hassan can't give it away. What did he give away then? Political royal leadership. That's why even the non-Shi'i, what do they call Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan? What's his title? أول ملوك الإسلام. The first king in Islam. What's a king? What's a king in Islam? I don't understand what exactly a king in Islam is. I know what the khulafa are. They are infallible individuals chosen by God. What's a king in Islam? He's the first king of the Muslims. Kings and luxury and throne, that doesn't exist. In Islam, you have a leader ordained by Allah, and who do they have? Representatives. A king in Islam is not something we acknowledge in Islamic theology. Rasulullah did something similar, by the way. He saw that there were political authorities alive, He allowed them to live. He didn't give them religious leadership. He was the religious authority. But He said, you can live luxuriously if you like. You will fail at the end of the day. So when He would send letters to Kisra, king of Persia, he rejected. He's okay, live, it's okay. And Najashi from Africa, a king, he says, look, I invite you to Islam. He sends him a letter. He says, not right now, although later he became Muslim. Al-Muqawqas, who is called Cyrus, patriarch of Alexandria, sent him a letter. He says, I invite you to the way of Allah. He says, look, I'm not going to become Muslim, but I respect your presence. Rasulullah didn't say there can only be one leader allowed. La. He is the religious leader. You can be a whatever you want, it can be some sort of authority, but you have no religious authority. Imam Hassan did this. You can call yourself whatever, a king, a this, a that. I will still call the shots religiously. You can harm the image of Islam if you want, but just stay true to the terms that I have laid out against you. In this time period, Imam al-Hassan went back to Medina. What did he do? Brothers and sisters, the sickest society is the one that is deprived from ilm. He saw there was a need to spread knowledge. A society that is ruled by a man who makes Jum'ah on Khamis is a very backward-minded society. Let me sit in the masjid of my grandfather Rasulullah and teach the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He would teach. You never saw a more bright Quranic scholar like Hassan ibn Ali. By the way, his title, Mujtaba, chosen from Allah. فَاجْتَبَاهُ رَبُّهُ وَجَعَلَهُ مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ. The Quran makes mention, Allah chose Rasulullah. If Imam al-Mujtaba is called the chosen one, what is he chosen for? Observe the following. Quran, don't look further than Hassan ibn Ali. One day a man says, I came to Medina and I had a very perplexing question. Surah Al-Buruj in the Quran, there's a line in there, وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ. Then what? وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ. What are the shahid and what is the mashhood? What is this? Allah is swearing by something. Then He says, وَتِلَا أَصْحَابِ الْأُخْدُودِ. Who are the shahid? Who's the mashhood? The witness and the witnessing. Who is that? He says, I go to Medina and I see in the mosque of the Prophet halaqat, which are circles of studies. In the middle is a scholar teaching. I went to the first man and I said to him, what is the shahid? What is the mashhood in this surah? He said, as for the shahid, it's Yawm al-Jum'ah, it's the day of Friday. It is a witnessing. Wa Yawm al-Mashhood, the day of that is being witnessed, is the day of Arafah. He's like, that really doesn't make sense to me, but thank you, scholar. He goes to another scholar sitting with his own group of students. He says, what is the shahid and mashhood? What is this tafsir in the Quran? Allah swearing by it. I want to know who is the witness and what was witnessed. He says, as for the shahid, it's Yom Arafah. He flipped it. As for mashhud, it's Yom al-Jum'ah. He's like, you both are giving me answers. If I plug them back into the Quran, I don't know. Now he goes to another man. He says in the hadith, this can be found in Tafsir ibn Kathir, by the way. Fakhruddin al-Razi's, you can look at our tafsir, let alone our tafsir, by the way. Mizan, Amthal, Qummi, whatever tafsir you look at, the following hadith is found when you get to this tafsir. He says, I went to a man teaching, his face كَأَنَّ وَجْهُ dinar. It looks like a golden gem shining. And I said to him, who is the shahid? Who is the mashhud? He says, as for the shahid, it is none other than Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He says, how is that the case? He says, the Quran. Look how he uses the Quran to explain the Quran. Ya ayyuhan nabi, inna arsalnaka shahidan wa mubashiran wa nadhira. As for the mashhud, it is Yawmul Qiyamah. Why? He says, the Quran says, وَذَلِكَ يَوْمٌ مَشْهُودٌ. And it is a day that is a witness on that day. The Prophet witnesses you, and he witnesses what happens on the day of judgment. He says, I went back and I asked, who were these individuals? He's like, as for the first scholar, it is Ibn Abbas. As for the second, it's Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab. As for the third that satisfied your Quranic answer, it's none other than the root of the Quran, Hassan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. As for Quranic ilm, none come near Hassan ibn Ali. Then you found a situation where you saw an influx of Roman delegations approaching the Muslim empire. Why is that the case? The Romans, or the Byzantiums to be specific, an offshoot of the Roman Empire. From how much we have to study Roman history in high school, I hate to repeat it to you now. Just the ending, King Augustus, whatever, Augustine, he fell. The Byzantine Empire rose. They lived off the last few in Constantinople in their establishment. They were very close to Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. Muawiyah would source a lot of his poison from them. They were skilled in providing the most potent poison. Now you found they were always having delegations. His closest confidant is Sir John al-Rumi, Sir John the Roman. His wife, Maysoon, arguably, an Orthodox Christian, Yazid's mother. He had a close relationship with these individuals. So they would come in delegations constantly. When they would come, they would ask Muawiyah questions. We want to learn more about your worldview and heritage, you Muslims. So we have questions to carry. Muawiyah hears the questions. I am God's representative. Ask me. Okay. Can we ask you questions that are both biblical and Quranic? It's like, sure. How about scientific? Says, sure. How about spiritual? Said, sure. How about physical? Says, go ahead. Says, okay. Can you answer the questions with respect to the distance between the heavens and the earth? And can you tell us about the distance between truth and falsehood? And can you tell us about the animals that were created without mother or father? And can you also talk to us about what is a neutral gender, neither male or female? And tell us about 10 creations. One is ashad min al-akhir, stronger than the other. So I have no idea. Where do I even begin? If you continue, make your way to Medina, there is a scholar there, he'll help you. Doesn't have the heart to say Hassan ibn Ali. They get to Medina, this Roman delegation. They enter the masjid of Rasulullah. How are they supposed to know which scholar are you talking about? Well, when you shine with nur, it's not hard to miss you. It's not hard to see you and catch you. It's quite a challenging effort to miss you unless you try your hardest. They come and they approach him. And they said, we came to the Khalifa of Allah, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, and we asked him questions. He didn't even begin answering. He reverted us to you. He says, go ahead and ask. They said, but first, are you a scholar or not? Look at the piety of Ahlul Bayt. I am not from the ignorant. That's it. So the titles of some people these days. I am this. Just get to your name and finish it. How many titles do you want to put? Learn from the Ahlul Bayt. Be proud of your accomplishments academically within the fields that you accomplish, and when necessary, bring them forth. But in your day-to-day gatherings, I have a person, he's like, my name is someone, let's just skip his name, let's say his name is Adam. My name is Adam, MD. He puts his actual academic conclusion, Adam, MD, Adam Banker. It's like, who cares, man? Just get to the thing. He says, I am not from the, some people are smiling here, they're probably guilty of the same thing. I am not from the ignorant. They said, okay, can you tell us about animals that were created without mother or father? He says, easy. The crow that helped bury Habil when Qabil killed his brother. Allah created it to help and without mother or father. The sheep, when Allah brought it forth as an alternative to slaughter for Ibrahim and Ismail. Kabshin Azim, the Quran says. Without mother or father. The staff of Prophet Musa that turned into a serpent without mother or father. The she camel of Nabiullah Salih that emerged from the mountain was born without mother or father. And he begins to list and list and list. And they said, how about the distance between the heavens and the earth? He said, it's the sayhat al-mazloom bid-du'a, the call of an oppressed person in du'a. You are oppressed, Allah will answer your du'a. Just say, Ya Allah. That has made your voice get into the heavens suddenly. That's the distance between the samawat and the aradeen. Then he continues, what about the distance between haqq and batil, truth and falsehood? Oh, it's a short one. How long? 4 fingers between the ear and the eye. What you hear with the ear, verify it with your eye. You do not share gossip and ghibah and just believe in it suddenly until you actually see the individual. Otherwise, you might tarnish another individual's reputation. The distance between truth and falsehood, what you hear with the ear, 4 fingers, verify it with your eye. Then they said very clearly, describe what is a neutral gender, neither male or female, and how do you identify it? Imam al-Mujtaba said clearly that there are scientific anomalies. You know how much we're talking about this today, by the way? It's such a politicized issue, gender and so forth. Nonetheless, there is a medical exception where there are scientific anomalies, not even in the 0.10 percentile, 0.001 percentile, but they happen, where a person may be born in that medical hermaphrodite situation where their gender is very much questionable. Ahlul Bayt don't say you don't have your rights. No, even you. Who cares? If there may have been mutations, if things didn't come out normally, totally fine. You are deserving of dignity and your rights. How do you identify you? Especially in the 7th century Arabian Peninsula, what technology do you have? So this, you wait for the development of the memory glands in the chest. If that doesn't form, then you wait until they hit puberty and emission comes out. If there is no emission, then you allow them to grow up further. If they do not have any distinction from their gender of sorts, then that is a neutral gender, and they side simply with that which they feel medically they are more adjusted to. There you go, that is a neutral gender. In that situation, they concluded, then what about 10 things, the creations of God? One is stronger than the other. Imam al-Mujtaba began, he said, you know, stone is very hard. Stone, diamond, is the hardest creation, the hardest substance, mineral that is out there. Rock is hard. Iron breaks rock. Fire melts iron. Water extinguishes fire. The cloud carries the water. The wind moves the cloud. The angel who controls the wind moves the wind. The angel of death overpowers the angel that controls the wind. Death overpowers the angel of death, and Allah overpowers death, for He is the living that does not die. As for ilm, esoteric knowledge, Quranic knowledge, none came near Hassan al-Mujtaba, let alone if we tap into the world of his unwavering generosity. Very briefly, one man was in Medina, hungry. May God bless all those who are starving and troubled and have no one to go to. But when Ahlul Bayt live in your town, you always have a meal ready for you. Goes to the house of Imam al-Mujtaba, knocks on the door, and he's embarrassed from how many times he's asked Imam al-Mujtaba, can you spare just some food or some money I can use to buy food? And he has nothing to give him in return. Don't worry, when the person you're asking, the recipient is called Kareem Ahl al-Bayt, he got you, don't worry. He goes to the door and he's like, now I want to gift him something. Not just say give me, I don't have anything physical, so I'm going to give him something arbitrary. What will I give him? Poetry. I wrote a piece of poetry in his honor. He goes and knocks on the door. Imam al-Hassan, without hesitation, looks at him, says, Assalamu alaikum. Don't worry. He goes and grabs 500 dirham and he says, it's all yours. Then he says, Assalamu alaikum. He closes the door. The man, right before he closes the door, he puts his hand in. He's like, wait. At least wait for me to gift you what I can compensate you with. Imam al-Hassan said, no. Look at this. He doesn't even want him to gift him poetry. Poetry is not a commodity. He's like, no, don't waste it. Don't waste it. In fact, watch. I've never seen anyone so kareem. I really haven't. He says, I'm going to gift you poetry. Imam al-Hassan began to recite poetry. He says, نحن أناس نوالنا خضل يرتع فيه الرجاء والأمل تجود قبل السؤال أنفسنا خوفا على ماء وجه من يسأل. We are a people. Acquiring anything from us is very easy. Our generosity happens before you even decide to ask from us. To preserve the dignity of your face from when you ask, you don't have to ask us for any form of compensation in return. We are a people. If you want something from me, it's easily acquired. You don't even need to bother about rewarding us in response. We are the manifestation of the ayah. إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا Allahu Akbar. This Imam, brothers and sisters, society was fed up, could not handle. Muawiyah sees, no matter what we do, he keeps winning the hearts of man and womankind. Do you have the heart of Al-Mujtaba in yours, brothers and sisters? How many of you are remembering him? I have no issue commemorating Imam al-Hassan on today, 7 Safar. It's not enough. We should do it every single day. Every day, Hassan al-Mujtaba should be in your heart and mind and spirit, brothers and sisters. I remember someone once said, one of the ulama, Sheikh Abdul Zahra al-Ka'bi, Sheikh Abdul Zahra al-Ka'bi, famous alim from Iraq, died in the 1970s. He says, I had a dream, I saw my lady Fatima. I said to her, Sayyidati, when is your shahada? There are 3 dates. One, a week after Rasulullah, 40 days, 90 days. Which is it? She said, is it a problem to commemorate me 3 times? If I told you one, you would only think of me once and forgive me. You remember Imam al-Hassan, 7 Safar, and today, it's not enough. Not enough. Muawiyah was fed up. He said to Marwan ibn al-Hakam, I can't. This is not working out. Marwan, what do? Get the most toxic poison. Who's going to deliver it to Hassan ibn Ali? He says, you know, Ju'da bint al-Ash'ath, the daughter of al-Ash'ath ibn Qais al-Kindi. Al-Ash'ath ibn Qais contributed to killing Imam Ali. His son, Muhammad, contributed later on to killing Imam al-Hussein. And his daughter, Ju'da, will now commit the most heinous of atrocities. Send her the poison with a deal. You finish him. Don't worry, Ju'da. Dunya, akhirah is with Hassan. Dunya is with Yazid. I will give you Yazid, and he gave her 50,000 dinar. That's how much the life of Imam al-Hassan was worth, unfortunately. This Imam of Ahlul Bayt, the son of Rasulullah, he would say, Hassanun minni wa ana min Hassan. He would be on the back of Rasulullah as a baby. You know what he would say? Some man would say, oh, how blessed you guys are, you young children of the Prophet, on the shoulders of Rasulullah. Rasulullah would say, La, walakin, how blessed it is that they are on my back. And I love that they are on my back playing Hassan and Hussein. This Imam is now then with his home, and he is seated with his wife. It was a hot day. He was fasting. And they say she came forth with that poison. Some say either in grapes. Others say sometimes perhaps it was in the milk. Nonetheless, you break your iftar in the best food. Look at Hassan ibn Ali, how he had to break his iftar. He takes a little bit of that poison. He knows his fate. As soon as he takes it, he feels the pains of death in his heart. He looks at her and she looks at him, and he says, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. الحمد لله على لقاء جدي سيد المرسلين وعلى أبي علي سيد الوصيين وعلى أمي سيدة نساء العالمين. قتلتيني قتلك الله. Alhamdulillah on the one who will now allow me to see my grandfather Rasulullah and my father Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And Alhamdulillah, I will now reunite with my mother Sayyidati Nisa al-Alameen. You have killed me, Ju'da. May Allah kill you in the dunya and bring about you great trouble in the akhirah. They say Ju'da bint al-Ash'ath went to Muawiyah and said, now give me the treasure and give me Yazid. He says, if you poison Hassan, what's stopping you from poisoning Yazid? She didn't win the dunya and she did not win the akhirah. But look at what happened to Imam al-Mujtaba. He was in his home, salamullahi alayh, as he was coughing that blood into the pail next to him. And he heard footsteps coming to him. It was his brother, Abi Abdullah al-Husayn. Imam al-Husayn began to cry, and he said to him, Habibi Husayn, Habibi Hussein, don't cry. فلا يوم كيومك يا أبا عبد الله. Oh Hussein, there will never be a day like your day. يزدلف إليك 30,000. 30,000 will go at you, all wanting to kill you. Do not cry for me, Ya Hussein. Imam Hussein said to Hassan, what did this and who did this to you, my brother? He said to him, that's with Allah. Come to me, I want to will for you my final requests. Before Imam Hassan could give him his final will and wasiyah, he said to Hussein, Hussein, cover the bowl. Says, why? He says, I hear Zainab is coming. I don't want her to see the blood from me inside that bowl. Hassan, you didn't want her to see your blood in the bowl. How about Zainab seeing the head of Hussein on the spear in Karbala? Imam al-Hassan then began to will his final will to Imam al-Hussein, and he said, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, the words of Imam al-Mujtaba, his final words. Alhamdulillah alladhi hadana lihadha wa ma kunna linahtadiya lawla an hadana Allah. Bismillah, hadha ma awsa bihi al-Hasan ibn Ali ila akhihi al-Husayn. This is what Hasan ibn Ali has now left as his will to his brother Hussein. Annahu yashhadu أن لا إله إلا الله وأن جدي رسول الله. That I testify there is no God but Allah, and that my grandfather is the final messenger of Allah. In that moment, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas came, Muhammad ibn Hanafiya came. He told them, pay allegiance to the Imam of your time, Sayyid al-Shuhada. That moment, Imam al-Mujtaba said to Imam al-Husayn, Ya Husayn, take me to the court of this house. I want to worship Allah under the sky. Abu Abdullah takes Imam al-Hasan to the court under the sky, and he begins to raise his hands and says, Bismillah wa billah, with a soft voice. Now the pangs of death are reaching the final moments. He keeps coughing that blood, and bits of his liver emerge from it. In so much pain, Imam al-Mujtaba, O mu'mineen, in these final moments, his brow began to sweat. He then extended his feet, and in that moment, the soul of Imam al-Hasan departed this world. Ayn al-munadi wa hasana wa shahida. Then Imam al-Husayn took Imam al-Hasan to the grave of Rasulullah. When he got to the grave of Rasulullah, she came out with her men and she said, Nahubnukum an bayti. take your son from my house. They said, no, this is what he wanted. She said, then let their arrows rain over the body of Hassan ibn Ali. They took Imam al-Hassan to Baqi' and they buried him in Baqi'. They saw Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas holding his sword. He says, let me at them, Ya Hussein. Hussein said, not right now. There will be a day you will use your sword. Then he says the line, إني أحامي أبدا عن ديني وعن إمام صادق اليقين صدق النبي الطاهر الأمين. Abbas said, I will protect my Imam who dies in this way. Right now I won't do it. There will be a day I will do. The Sha'ar and poet records that there was a discussion between Imam Hussein and Hassan. He says to him, Imam Hussein, is it fair that me in my grave millions come and visit me? Right now, a week ago, 21 million visited Abu Abdullah. Only a handful visited you. Is it fair over my grave? There is a gold dome. There is nothing but a rock over yours. The poet then says, Imam Hassan replies, it's fair. Because was it fair I died with you? But look at how you died, Ya Hussein. Is it fair I died poisoned and you died with the sword of Shimr across your neck? Ma'tam al-Hussein, Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein.
Hussein, 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 Hussein.
Mu'mineen, please make lines here. Jazakallah. Hussein, 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 Hussein,
Hussein.
On the pieces of Qasim they cried, for no one could bear that he died, least of all Hussein, least of all Hussein. On the pieces of Qasim they cried, for no one could bear that he died. On the pieces of Qasim they cried, for no one could bear that he died. Least of all Hussein, least of all Hussein. Everyone. Least of all Hussein, least of all Hussein. O lovers of Hassan, come near, as I narrate to you his death. He was left to defend the Imam and to protect the deen of Islam. He was left to defend the Imam and to protect the deen of Islam. So Qasim approaches Hussein in a moment of tremendous pain. The rose of Hassan has to fight, but how can Hussein risk his life? The rose of Hassan has to fight, but how can Hussein risk his life? On the pieces of Qasim they cried, for no one could bear that he died. Least of all, everyone. Least of all Hussein, least of all Hussein, least of all Hussein. He was of his brother a trust. Hussein could not see him in dust. O Qasim, my son, take a breath I ask you, how do you view death? O Qasim, my son, take a breath. I ask you, how do you view death? His answer we must always keep. His answer caused angels to weep. You know, uncle, I love honey, but death is sweeter than honey. You know, uncle, I love honey, but death is sweeter than honey. On the pieces of Qasim they cried, for no one could bear that he died. Least of all Hussein, everyone. Least of all Hussein, least of all Hussein, least of all Hussein. Said Mawla, O Qasim, my pride, for women you must stay behind. So Qasim goes back to his camp, his face full of tears and so damp. So Qasim goes back to his camp, his face full of tears and so damp. His mother said, why do you cry? He said, for Hussein I can't die. Farwa pulled out a letter, hoping that this would make things better. Farwa pulled out a letter, hoping that this would make things better. When Mawla saw who it was from, his entire body went numb. He had to let Qasim go fight. The young nephew's face became bright. He had to let Qasim go fight. The young nephew's face became bright. Hussein gave him turban and cloak, seeing him Lady Zainab broke. To aunties and mother farewell, as Qasim comes out of his shell. To aunties and mother farewell, as Qasim comes out of his shell. On the pieces of Qasim they cried, for no one could bear that he died. Least of all Hussein, everyone, least of all Hussein, least of all Hussein, least of all Hussein. The lion of Hassan so brave, he sent 35 to the grave. Then Qasim, his armor so large, so cowardly enemies charge. Then Qasim, his armor so large, so cowardly enemies charge. They struck Qasim from every side. Oh uncle, help me, Qasim cried. They ripped his young body apart and struck right at his uncle's heart. They ripped his young body apart and struck right at his uncle's heart. Oh Qasim, your call is still loud. We always want to make you proud. Oh Qasim, your call is still loud. We always want to make you proud. On the pieces of Qasim they cried, for no one could bear that he died. Least of all Hussein, least of all Hussein. Everyone, least of all Hussein, least of all Hussein, least of all Hussein, least of all Hussein. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein,
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. What has happened to my house? What has happened to my house? Zainab had said, oh people, what has happened to my house? Zainab had said, oh people, what has happened to my house? Yesterday it was so full, now there's only emptiness. Zainab had said, oh people, what has happened to my house? Zainab had said, oh people, what has happened to my house? We were taken as prisoners to Kufa and the court of Sham. We were taken as prisoners to Kufa and the courts of Sham. We didn't even have our veils. What has happened to my house? Zainab has said, oh people,
what has happened to my house? Zainab has said, oh people, what has happened
to my house? Oh Hussein, your daughter, who couldn't sleep without your chest. Oh Hussein, your daughter, who couldn't sleep without your chest. She had went to sleep in Sham. What has happened to my house? Zainab had said, oh people,
what has happened to my house? Zainab had said, oh people, what has happened to my house?
oh my mother, I'll come to you. I'll perform your arba'in. Oh my brother, I'll come to you. I'll perform your arba'in. Sakina will not be there. What has happened to my house? Zainab had said, oh people,
what has happened to my house? Zainab has said, oh people, what has happened to my house?
Zainab had said, oh people,
What has happened to my house?
yesterday it was so full, now there's only emptiness. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, 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 Hussein. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.